to come and give us $600 million and take 70% of the company. Are you crazy? Moro, are you crazy? Unbelievable.
Okay, see, you seem to have a lot of information as far as VALCO is concerned. I mean, share with us why, first of all, this whole matter has come up again. You know, about what to do with VALCO. We seem to be confused because government wants something, workers want something else. What's your take on this story?
Well, I mean, first of all, it is not true, cannot be true, that the country doesn't have a plan which would ensure the viability of VALCO. That's a false statement. Anybody who says that we don't know what to do is deliberately lying. We know what to do. Okay. Because if you go as far back as the Nkrumah era, if you look at the 7-year development plan of Nkrumah and so on, the plan for VALCO is clear. The plan to ensure that VALCO will become not just a viable entity, but also the bedrock on which Ghana's industrialization was set. It's clear. There's no doubt at all about it. There's a plan. Anybody suggesting that there's no plan is either deliberately trying to confuse the public, or is up to some mischief.
Or is ignorant.
Well, if you're talking about VALCO, if you're involved in VALCO and so on, you must know that there's a plan.
Fair point.
You understand?
Fair point.
So for those who claim to be involved in VALCO, especially at the governmental level, if they claim ignorance of the history of VALCO, that would be most unfortunate. There's a plan. Now, there's no doubt at all that Nkrumah envisaged that it is only at the point of a fully integrated aluminium industry that VALCO can begin to make economic sense, can begin to impact on the industrialization program and so on, fully integrated aluminium industry. That's clear. Okay. So, that is clear. Now, the other thing which for me is most important is that this country is sitting on the raw material, bauxite. We are sitting on bauxite, raw material, untouched, valued at $48 billion.
That's huge.
Now, isn't it very, very strange that we are sitting on $48 billion and we are complaining that we don't have $6 million?
600 million.
600 million.
Yeah, $600 million. Fantastic. Thanks for the correction.
You're welcome.
But very strange. We are sitting on $48 billion. It's in your soil. And you are complaining that, oh, we need 600 million, we can't find it. What's wrong with you? I mean, if you're this incompetent, excuse me, if you're this incompetent, if you're this useless, why are you anywhere near government assets? Why have we given our powers to you to manage our affairs? We're sitting on $48 billion and you're complaining about 600 million. Incredible. Okay? Now you're saying that we are sitting on $48 billion of raw materials. We are talking about an industry which potentially can become the backbone of our industrialization project and so on. And we are throwing our arms in despair and saying that, oh, you need an individual. A company is an individual, I suppose, you know, to come and give us $600 million and take 70% of the company. Are you crazy? Moro, are you crazy? Unbelievable. But this is the argument we are making. And then sometimes we create the impression that this is an ideological debate. There's no ideological debate. This is about common sense. Simple common sense. You understand? Now, you need $600 million in order to make VALCO run and so on. That's what you need. Who says that the only means of generating $600 million is by giving 70% of the company to somebody, some company? You know, you have been a banker, you know. You can actually, on the basis of the viability of the enterprise, go to a bank.
And make a case.
Make a case and get $600 million, which would enable you to retrofit, buy equipment and so on, and you pay it as a loan. The Bank of Financial Institutions doesn't have to have shares in VALCO to make you generate $600 million.
They will happily give you the money.
It is viable. The banks and financial institutions deal on the viability of the project.
Yeah.
Why? We know that we are sitting on $48 billion. What deal can't you make with a financial institution or a bank or something in order to save VALCO? Why should you have to sell 70% of VALCO to be able to generate 600 million? Peanuts compared to what we are sitting on. It doesn't make any sense at all. Sometimes I'm lost. Sometimes I wonder how public officials think. Well, sometimes I actually wonder whether they do any thinking at all. So this is the reality. Okay? Now, Moro. You see, the VALCO project was so well thought out. And every step that has to be taken has already clearly been defined. You don't have to start thinking and so on. In fact, I got very highly interested in the VALCO project when I had conversations with Mr. Atuahoy. He's been working on this integrated aluminium industry over a long period of time and has a clear understanding of what the industry needs to survive and so on. So I've had some conversations with him. I've also had some conversations with Professor Akila Kwasoya, who happened to have been the chair of the Volta River Authority at the time when there were problems with power supply, for the industry and so on. And it is clear that this is a viable project which we can run as Ghana. And we don't need any 70% shareholder to come and give us 600 million to run it. It doesn't make any sense at all. But Moro, look, since 1996, especially after 1982-83, we've made this argument that private sector involvement in the running of state enterprises is key to their survival. We've made that argument very strongly. Over the period, we privatized 400 state enterprises. More than 400 state enterprises were privatized. How many survived after privatization? How many? Can you count 6 who survived after privatization out of 400? So our history, our experience shows us that privatization is not necessarily a panacea for reviving state enterprises and making state enterprises play the role that they ought to play in the economy. I'll give you one example. You see, we privatized the Tema shipyard and dry dock. And I recall when President Mills became president of Ghana, the shipyard and dry dock was getting destroyed after privatization. And he was so alarmed that eventually President Mills had to take back the Tema shipyard and dry dock because privatization was killing it. That's one example. Go and check. The facts are available. You understand? We privatized Tema shipyard and dry dock under the same conditions, using the same useless arguments. President Mills had to take it back. You understand what I'm saying? So the history of privatization does not support this new level of recklessness that is leading us to the privatization of vital state assets. The history is against it. You understand? Now, recently, under President John Dramani Mahama, before President John Dramani Mahama was elected as president, in the last elections, Tema Oil Refinery, the sing-song was that it should be privatized. Privatization is the only way out. You need a strategic investor. You remember?
Yes.
After less than 2 years of the Mahama administration, the Tema Oil Refinery has been revamped and is doing excessively well. It's recording profit. It has started refining Ghana's own oil and so on. The record of the Tema Oil Refinery, still in the hands of the state, in spite of all the sing-song about privatizing it and so on, should serve as an example and a model for VALCO. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Look, we were jumping over ourselves about privatization of ECG and so on. In the last 18 months, 19 months of the Mahama administration, look at the figures in ECG. He knows better than me. The situation in ECG is improving. They are beginning to pay their debts and so on through worker participation in management. That whole argument about privatizing ECG is dying. Don't let us take that silly argument to VALCO. It will work. It has never worked. There is no sign that it's going to work. If you sit on $48 billion of raw materials and you begin to throw your hands in the air and so on, you are simply incompetent. You have no vision. You understand what I'm saying? So it's clear. There are a few things that worry me about VALCO. And I'm saying this for the first time. I recall that when President Mills assumed office, he was told that Ghana had bought back VALCO from Kaiser Aluminium.
Yes.
So President Mills was looking for the papers on the sale or the repurchase of VALCO or the purchase of VALCO.
The transaction.
The transaction.
Yeah, documents surrounding the transaction.
He couldn't find it.
Shocking.
He couldn't find one piece of paper.
How?
I'm telling you, you can check. President Mills couldn't find one piece of paper which affirmed that we had bought back VALCO.
See.
And I'm going to say something publicly. Now, I'm going to say something publicly. I knew that Charles Mensah, of the IEA,
yes.
was at the center of the negotiations and so on. And he had been VALCO chairman for a very long time. So I approached Charles. I said, Charles, what is happening? I am told, I have information, that there's not a sheet of paper confirming that we have purchased VALCO. You, as chairman of VALCO, and you, as somebody who was involved in this negotiation, must have some idea about where the documentation is. You know what he told me? And Charles is still alive. He's probably even watching the show. What he told me that the documents were available in a law firm in London.
What?
Yes.
What's the document doing in London?
How would I know?
Wow.
How would I know? So if you run state enterprises this way, how do you expect them to strive and survive? So you deliberately run them aground and you deliberately turn around to come and buy it and own it and destroy it, strip it apart and destroy it, and have no regard for the national, interest. Look, all economists, from the right and from the left, agree on one thing. Neo-colonial economists like Ghana's can only make movements forward from industrialization. The sale of primary products and so on is taking us nowhere. We all agree on it. Now, the basis of industrialization, the foundation of industrialization is also being attacked and destroyed. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave us? You understand? So, look, I am in full sympathy, not partial, full sympathy with the Public Utility Workers Union, with all the trade union movements which are expressing opposition to privatization. Their cause is legitimate, their cause is in the national interest, and we better listen to them. Because they've seen it all. Look, Massa, in 1983, 300,000 workers, and watch the figure, 300,000 workers lost their jobs as a result of the government embarking on the reckless path of neoliberalism. 300,000 workers lost their jobs. What does that mean for the trade unions? What does that mean for the trade unions? What does that do for the national economy? So, 300,000 workers lost their jobs because we decided to embark on this reckless path. My brother, you know, one of the major problems that VALCO faces has to do with the supply of power. He knows that better than me. One of the major problems that VALCO faces has to do with the supply of power. We have been depending on hydro, to supply VALCO with electricity. One, because hydro is relatively very cheap. The cost of generating hydro is about 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour. 2 to 3 cents.
Kilowatt hour, yeah.
Okay. Now, if you shift to thermal generation, the cost now is between 10 to about 50 cents.
Yes.
10 to about 50 cents, depending on how you do it and so on. Okay. So hydro was relatively cheaper, and it made a lot of sense to depend on hydro for high-consuming industries and so on. It made a lot of sense. But right now, as we speak, the Western countries are up in arms against the generation of power with coal.
Right.
But we know that the Chinese have developed a technology which is called clean coal.
Yeah.
Much, much cheaper, environmentally friendly, and so on. So if we have a problem with supplying the bauxite industry with power, why are we not looking at clean coal?
Right.
The clean coal technology which has been developed by China.
Yeah.
Why are we still fixated on thermal generation of power? Why are we still fixated even on the hydro generation of power, saying that, look, we don't have enough power for VALCO and so on? Why are we not beginning to look at clean coal as an alternative?
Yeah.
So, you see, Master, sometimes you just get tired going over these things year after year, year after year, year after year, and policymakers are still not thinking. You get worried. Why are policymakers still not thinking?
Yeah.
Why are they always looking for the easy way out? Sell, 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 sell. And we've sold 400 to 500 state enterprises and destroyed all of them. The only few that survived, Movenpick Ambassador. Alright, tell me. Even Movenpick Ambassador collapsed. It had to take some efforts, in the third NBC government to revive it. Using some Arab funds and so on. Golden Tulip.
Yeah.
How did Golden Tulip survive? Now here it's called Lancaster. So how did it survive? It survived because the Libyans came and used state money and state power, took it over and ran it.
Yeah.
The Libyans that we sold to the Libyan government. And they came and saved offended Golden Tulip, which is now Lancaster. Which other ones survived?
Yeah.
Everyone that has survived, the history is there. And we are still misbehaving, we are still destroying the base of the national economy and so on. There are some things that I feel so very strongly about. This seizure of VALCO lands and the establishment of an industrial park. What does it mean? So if you want to establish an industrial park, you can't get any land in Ghana. The only land you can get is the VALCO land,
Right.
which has been acquired for a specific purpose, which is still relevant to our national development effort. That is the one you go and acquire and you establish an industrial park. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? Master, I am tired, and I'm not the only one who is tired. So many people are tired, saying the same things over and over and over and over again, and nobody listens. Look, as for this allegation that Ibrahim Mahama is involved in so on, this is a ruse, okay? I am not surprised. Look, for a long period of time, people wanting to, attack the president, people wanting to create the impression that the president is involved in some nepotistic, enterprise and so on, would always attack Ibrahim Mahama. Ibrahim Mahama has become the fall guy and so on. I'm sure he's keenly aware of it, and I'm sure that he's not worried about it, and the facts will speak for itself. I mean, recently when he acquired this gold mine, he saw the hula balloon which was generated. It turned out that his bid was actually approved by the Akufo-Addo government and not the Mahama government and so on. That's a fact. In fact, Abu Jinapor, who was then Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, had to come up and say, oh, it was during my tenure and so on. But he will continue to be the fall guy all the time. That's the cross he has to carry. And he has to develop thick shoulders to be able to carry that cross. Yeah. You can't have your brother as president and not suffer any consequence at all, especially in the politics of a country like Ghana. You will continue to suffer some consequences. So Ibrahim should continue to carry his cross.